Mr Speaker.
I call Claire Curran.
John Key's vision is dull. It's got no substance. There's no other way to put it. He's out of touch with real New Zealanders who are struggling to cope with skyrocketing power, petrol and grocery bills. And he doesn't have any new ideas. The ideas he's had are questionable as to whether they can be delivered and whether he's committed to delivering them. After more than 2 years in government, the pressure is now on John Key and National to deliver a stronger economy, and once all the spin and promises are stripped away, they will be judged on their results. John Key's statement to Parliament today spelt out National's plan for the year, and I didn't hear a plan to grow jobs in the economy and no plan to help families under financial pressure. Their big idea is to sell our most valuable public assets to the highest bidder, which means more and more of our wealth will go offshore. Only Labor will stop asset sales. Labor has a plan for a strong export economy, a fairer tax system and strong public services. We'll introduce a tax-free zone to help middle and lower income families with the rising cost of living, and we know that it's jobs that matter. What do New Zealanders want? They want certainty of incomes and direction, not more of the same. They want to know where we're headed as a nation, that we've got a plan about jobs for them for now, but also about securing the jobs of the future for their kids, good jobs with a future. I recently asked my electorate in Dunedin South to tell me what were their 3 biggest issues, and they told me the rising cost of living, the cost of electricity and rising inequalities. Doesn't sound like a step change, it sounds more like a step backwards. What's National going to do? 25 cents an hour extra to the vulnerable, more cuts to services, sell our energy companies so that electricity will go up even further. John Key talked today about how New Zealand needs world-class infrastructure to ensure our workers and business can compete as efficiently and productively as possible. And he talked about broadband being the revolutionary technology of our country, and that government wants New Zealanders up and down the country to have access to ultra-fast services at an affordable price. Well, I agree with them, but are we going to get it? It doesn't look like it. Ultra-fast broadband policy was number 2 in John Key's top 10 pledges before the 2008 election. It was his personal guarantee to deliver ultra-fast broadband fibre to 75% of New Zealand homes for $1.5 billion. People thought that sounds good, but will they get it? And just how committed to the UFB are this government? A recent Dom Post article quoted from a cabinet paper released under the OIA under great duress, which said that the UFB would proceed in 3 or 4 phases. But then it said, quote, the rollout could halt before the 3rd phase, the widespread deployment of fibre across suburbs, if factors such as a lack of demand made the project too financially risky. Too risky? Does that mean that the poorer parts of New Zealand might not get ultra-fast broadband? Does that mean that the more remote parts of New Zealand won't get rural fibre? Does this mean that the government isn't really committed to its election pledge? What is the government's plan then? What is their vision? To deliver on the biggest commitment that they made before the election? Well, I'm not even sure that they'll do that. Yesterday, Stephen Joyce announced that they were negotiating a $300 million contract for rural broadband with a consortium of Telecom and Vodafone. These are the 2 biggest players in the telecommunications scene, the incumbents. National's decision is to negotiate rural broadband contracts with the incumbent providers who have repeatedly failed rural customers. This is not being anti-telecom or anti-Vodafone. They're important companies in our telecommunications industry. But the industry is evolving fast. It's rapidly merging with the broadcasting industry with new technologies. The internet is the future. There's been an outcry about yesterday's decision. Federated Farmers, National's mates, have questioned whether there will be a step change and suggested it's not ambitious enough or competitive enough. Here's what Connor English, Bill's brother, said, who works for Federated Farmers. He said, if you've got 2 incumbents and they're just going to get bigger, then naturally that does raise competition concerns. Big concerns from Federated Farmers on this. couple of weeks ago, Selwyn Pallett from the Productive Economy Council wrote about the long-term consequences of asset sales. Labor has learnt that lesson. He wrote about the sale of Telecom, which saw a dividend stream flow out of this country, which could have seen broadband infrastructure in place a decade ago. We tried to do something about that. He said Telecom's monopolistic pricing effectively became a foreign tax on all New Zealanders and a handbrake on economic development. And now we're proposing to hand over our newest and most important piece of infrastructure to them, not only in rural but likely to be in urban too. Let them have a role, but don't give them a monopoly. There are innovative solutions available to deliver broadband faster to the 800,000 rural New Zealanders who are crying out for it. People like the man who contacted me last year from Winchester near Timaru. He'd moved there from Auckland. He now needs to move back north for personal and health reasons, but he can't sell his home. Why? Because he can't get broadband. The response from Telecom and the Minister: you'll have to wait 5 or 6 years. Winchester is not remote. FX already runs fibre straight down State Highway 1, right near his house, and they were part of a bid for rural broadband that committed to delivering a 4G wireless network in 2 years with better speeds at a lower cost. This man cancelled his life insurance. He was told by the local national MP to go on a benefit. How innovative was that? There's been too much secrecy, not enough transparency, and too many questions about this particularly important piece of infrastructure, and no evidence of a wider plan about what the government will do with broadband. Labor wants New Zealanders to have ultra-fast broadband, but broadband is just part of what's needed to deliver a digital transformation strategy for this country. We need digital vision and a concrete digital agenda. Under this government and this minister, we don't have either. Instead, there is the absence of a cohesive regulatory environment to enable New Zealand to take advantage of broadband investment, the destruction of New Zealand-developed content, the lack of a clearly articulated vision for New Zealand as a 21st century digital economy, the failure of our education system to equip young Kiwis with the digital skills needed to transform this economy. Mr. Speaker, how government spends its money is important. How can we provide New Zealanders and our children with the knowledge that we can have sustainable jobs and industries? Government, as the biggest purchaser of goods and services, has the capacity and the responsibility to develop domestic industry from the way we spend our money. This government is committed to big deals that cut out local suppliers at lowest cost. We've seen in this government's approach to spending $500 million of taxpayers' money on building trains for Auckland. The objective is a lowest cost bid which is unlikely to see that money spent inside New Zealand to sustain and build our rail engineering industry. And this is despite the Prime Minister's claim that National will build the financial durability of Kiwi Rail. This is a joke. National's reluctant commitment to Kiwi Rail is a sign of a government that would prefer to see more heavy freight on our roads than on rail. I also want to talk about how government spends its money in ICT, and you might be surprised to learn that the ICT industry in this country contributes $20 billion a year to our economy. It's worth $5 billion in exports a year, second only to the dairy sector. It employs around 40,000 people, and it invests on average around 9% of revenue in research and development. It attracts $2 billion of government procurement. That's 7% of all procurement spending. It's on the precipice of vast opportunities with ultra-fast broadband and rural broadband. These are the industries of the future. But what does this government say? It's not, and finding skilled workers is that industry's biggest challenge. But what does the government say? It's not our problem. We're not investing in training. That's the industry's responsibility. So what is this government's responsibility? What's its plan? People need to know that they can trust their elected representatives to have their best interests at heart and to have a plan that's not using the tired old strategies from the past, but some new ideas, some innovative solutions that build confidence in our local industries and create jobs for the future for our kids. We aren't a corporation, Mr. Key. We're a country.